Welcome to another video. This will be another Boogie2988 reaction. Now, I've since given him another chance. I got upset with him some time ago, but I didn't really take all things into consideration when I made that choice. This is about a month ago now. But yep, we're back to reacting. We'll try to react to every video of his soon. But I might react to this. I'm not sure yet. But he made a video today. Keemstar, just stop being anxious. Does fake it till you make it work. Not sure what this is, and this is about the first reaction I'm doing to Boogie since he got his teeth fixed. So this should be interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, Boogie2988 coming at you live once again through the power of the internet. And yes, I'm still a little bruised from surgery. It's almost gone. I thought about putting on some makeup today, but I figure I don't really care. If you don't care, I don't care. So nobody cares. But in today's video, I want to talk about something that I talk quite a bit about here on the channel, and that is mental health. And I know that a lot of people are going to unfollow, a lot of people are going to unsubscribe. Every time I talk about this, a lot of people just really don't understand it. But I hope that you guys will bear with me, because something happened on Twitter over the weekend that I really want to talk about. So let's get right.
That makes no sense.
To the news. So over the weekend, Keemstar from Drama Alert did what he just generally does. He picked a topic, he said something horribly inflammatory, setting the internet on fire, and obviously drawing a lot of attention.
So you're all saying you have social anxiety illness, not illness.
To himself and getting a lot of clicks and hate rage clicks, which is pretty much Keemstar's business model, if you're not aware of that by now. And of course, a lot of people, including myself, fell for it.
I'll be using a new camera for this,
but he said, you're all saying you have social anxiety illness. Stop being afraid. Stop it, stop it, stop it. You all must be worrying about what other people think about you for this to happen. Don't care what people say or think. I don't. I just upset you all with no worries in the world. Just be me. Now that's an argument you're going to hear fairly frequently when you say that you have social anxiety, when you say that you're depressed. People will say, well, just stop feeling sorry for yourself, stop being afraid, stop doing it. A lot of people will equate that to saying stop having cancer, or stop having a broken arm, or stop being blind, right? And I think that's a fair comparison, because when you have true mental illness, I think that's something you can't just stop doing. But there is an argument to be made about faking it until you make it. I mean, literally, science has proven that the concept of faking confidence, faking like you're not afraid, pretending that you're stronger and better than you really are, will lead to the results of you having a better life sometimes. And so I think if that's what Keemstar was talking about here, I think he's not too far from the truth. Now, Keemstar also said a bunch of ludicrously stupid stuff, like social anxiety doesn't exist, depression doesn't exist, it's not actually a disorder. Everybody gets depressed sometimes, everybody gets social anxiety sometimes. And we're going to break some...
Alright. I want to stop right there. I'm not really going to take sides, but I'm just going to label my opinion and criticism if given. I don't agree with Keemstar if he said about depression, but I do agree with him about the anxiety thing. So... anxiety is just something that some people deal with, but it's not some disorder or anything like that. If that's what Keemstar said anxiety was not, then I think I kind of agree. Depression, I don't know fully. I just know that's a thing that people get depending on what happens to them. But yeah, let's continue.
Some of that down, but for the most part, I want to ignore it and focus on this one point, because I got wrapped up into it because I replied to Keemstar. What I said to Keem was, believe it or not, this is not terrible advice. I have horrible social anxiety, but I just pretend that I don't. I just choke it down, often with a cheeseburger, so I can get the work, stream, event, or date over with and do a good job. I still spend days afterwards worried about it, though. And what I was talking about there is the fake it till you make it philosophy. Say, for example, I go to an event like VidCon. Obviously, the entire time I'm there, I'm socially anxious. I am so socially anxious, sometimes I have to just escape to the back areas. Sometimes I have to just stay in my room. Sometimes I can't attend the parties. Sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to cancel on my assignments. But instead, I just fake that confidence. I pretend that that's not what I'm feeling. I push those feelings down, and I just make sure that everybody I meet at VidCon has a good experience with me. And I'm happy that I do it. It's a better quality of life because I chose to do that. Doesn't mean it's not without its downsides, though. Obviously, I'm 340 pounds right now. I'm heavily overweight and my eating disorder is one of the ways that I've learned to control, by unhealthily eating, learn to control my social anxiety, learn to control my depression. I traded one problem for another, so obviously I'm not a great example of someone you should listen to advice for. You should absolutely talk to a therapist.
Moment, guys.
Just absolutely talk to a psychiatrist, listen to their advice, not mine, not some stupid YouTuber, and especially not Keemstar. But that doesn't mean I don't want to share my experiences with you. I'll talk about what has worked for me, what I have dealt with, what I am going through. I feel like that can get you on your own individual path. It might get you into therapy. It might get you to a psychiatrist. It might get you eating and doing things correctly and exercising. Learning from my mistakes and sharing my mistakes is a great way to make sure you don't make those same mistakes. And I'm never going to be ashamed to do that. People have said on Twitter all weekend that I am a horrible example to follow. And that's exactly why I am so outspoken. Because I've been there, because I've been through the trenches, because I've suffered, because I've gone through what you may be going through right now. I know what did not work for me, and I know what did work for me, and I can give you an idea of what might work for you and what won't work for you. Learn from my mistakes, and hopefully learn from the things I get right. That's why I share this stuff. Now, obviously, Keemstar got more than his fair share. I got a spillover of as well. People attacking him for these opinions, and I'm probably going to do that a little bit in this video as well, too. But I also want to talk about the people that were supporting him and agreeing with him, because a lot of people just agree with him that social anxiety is not a real thing, that depression is not a real thing, and I want to talk about that. Right now, we're living in a society that pushes back against mental illness and pushes back against people who talk about it, especially YouTubers. I get hated on quite a bit on Twitter and social media, and even right here on my home turf of YouTube, when I talk about anxiety, when I talk about depression. It doesn't stop me from doing it. In fact, I lose a lot of subscribers every time I do. I'm still going to do it. Every time a YouTuber talks about this kind of stuff, people think we are doing it because we're trying to garner empathy or garner sympathy, or that we're trying to put money in our pockets. And I'm sure there are people out there who are motivated by that kind of thing. I'm sure that has existed. But I also think it's a straw man argument, because most of the YouTubers I know, even the ones who don't talk about it, suffer from some level of anxiety, suffer from some level of depression. In fact, I'm willing to bet that you have struggled with it at some level too. Social anxiety is interesting because I think it's something almost everybody feels at some point. You remember that one school function that you had to do where you had to go up and speak in front of the class, or that one date that you were super nervous about, or something along that lines. I'm sure you've experienced something like that. That's social anxiety, and everybody feels it on some level or another. It becomes a mental illness, it becomes a disorder, but it begins to impact your daily life. When you're not feeling that way just before a date or just before a school function, but you're feeling that way every single day when it comes to something as simple as interacting with a cashier at a store or the guy delivering your pizza, so much to the fact that you avoid social interaction altogether. And whereas about 100% of people will experience some social anxiety in their lives, about 18.1% of the United States population has a disorder when it comes to that anxiety. It's the most common mental illness in the United States. To say that it doesn't exist is quite disingenuous. It's also fairly interesting to know that anxiety and depression are often neighbors. Nearly one half of the people diagnosed with depression also get diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And a lot of people will point to me and say, Boogie, you can't be suffering from that kind of thing. You make 4 or 5 YouTube videos a week. You tweet every thought you have. You show up at big events and parties like a VidCon and Retropalooza and stuff along that lines. How can you have social anxiety? And the answer is, I still have it. I just learned how to maintain it. Maybe not in the healthiest ways, but I do manage to maintain it long enough to get done what I need done. To be entirely honest with you, I don't really leave the house very often. I have my friends over once a week, and sometimes when I do that, I barely interact with them. The only person I do really interact with is my best friend, my roommate, who's also my assistant, who does most of the grocery shopping and most of the leaving of the house that needs to happen. If I didn't walk my dog every day, then I probably wouldn't walk out the front door very frequently. And in fact, if you followed my story very closely, you'll know that the period of time where I was playing EverQuest and World of Warcraft, that was a 7-year period where I simply just gave up and let the social anxiety and the depression win. I was a complete shut-in, leaving the house maybe once a month, paying other people to get my groceries and to do my social interaction for me. There was a period of time where I was in complete failure. Now I've reversed it. And the way that I overcame this, my personal path, was to first get into therapy and start talking to a therapist to make sure that I was at a good place and a healthy place that I could start trying to overcome this stuff. Then I worked with a psychiatrist to find a medication that worked with me, and once I was in a medicated state and in a good mental place, we began exposure therapy, where I started going back out into the world and doing more stuff and doing my best to try to interact with people as often as I could. And the cornerstone of that philosophy was fake it until you make it. And I personally live my life by the fake it till you make it philosophy. Even right now, I am so anxious and so worried about how this video is going to be received that I just don't want to film it. I don't want to post it. I don't want to put it out into the world because I'm afraid of the fallout, the unsubscriptions and the negative comments, and how Twitter and Reddit is going to treat this video, much less the threat of Keemstar looming over me. But I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm going to pretend I'm not worried about that stuff and just do what I feel in my heart and my head I should do, which is make this video. And of course, this may not be the healthiest philosophy because it certainly has its downsides. There are certainly aspects of my life where I vastly need to improve, and this repeated pattern of faking it till I'm making it and exposing myself to this stuff is one of the reasons I gained so much weight. It's one of the reasons I'm struggling with it now, because I'm a comfort eater. And if I wasn't doing this, I probably wouldn't have as much to comfort myself about. But at the end of the day, even though I do still have my problems, when we go back and look at this very first video I uploaded to YouTube back in 2007, and this is at the beginning of my recovery, we see this junky old apartment and a terrible haircut. I don't think we can argue that I'm not doing better than I was then at 600 pounds back in 2007, just about miserable and never leaving the house. So it's not a perfect philosophy, and it's not necessarily one that I recommend. It's something that you and your therapist may consider. It may be something you and your psychiatrist consider, but I highly recommend anybody starting with therapy to create a personal roadmap that will work for you. But the reason Fake It Till You Make It was a cornerstone of how I recovered. Look at this article by Mental Floss. They talk about all the different ways to fake it and all of the positive interactions it can result with, how it can make your life a little bit better just by doing this kind of thing and doing the best you can. Honestly, it's scientifically proven to work, so it might be a cornerstone of your philosophy as well. But if you and your therapist decide to go that route, I do highly suggest you make sure that you are eating right. You make sure that you are exercising. Make sure that you have a decent hobby. Make sure that you have a decent support structure in your life. And never be afraid to talk about your social anxiety. Never be afraid to talk about your depression. Don't let idiots on the internet keep you from talking about that stuff the same way I won't let them keep me from talking about it with you right here, right now. Faking it does not equate ignoring it, and you should never ignore it. You should always be aware. You should always talk about it. You should always have someone to talk to it about. You should always recognize it. And the last thing you should do, and learn this from me, you should never choke it down with a cheeseburger, because that leads to a much more miserable life than you had to begin with. So do better than I did. Now, after all of this, Keemstar has said he's going to make a documentary on social anxiety, and this probably is BS. This is probably garbage. But maybe Keemstar did learn something from all of this, and if he does make this documentary, I would be glad to be a part of it, because I don't mind people casting their dispersions as long as I get the opportunity to dismiss them. Clearly, I have suffered from social anxiety my whole life. I think I'm a good candidate for this. I'm in some level of recovery, and I have a lot of recovery left to go, but I'm glad to share that recovery with you. The purpose of this video is very simple. Obviously, to defend myself a little bit and to talk about Keemstar a little bit, but also to say that if you're somebody out there who's ever felt social anxiety or felt a little sad, then you could relate to people who have the disorder. And if you're one of those people that have one of those disorders, and it keeps you from living a normal life, it keeps you from functioning on a daily basis, know that you can make recovery. I made recovery so you can make recovery, and I'm rooting for you if you did. And honestly, my recovery is not even all that good. Chances are you can do a lot better than I have, and I hope that you do. I'll never understand why we live in this society where people, when they talk about their mental illness, when they talk about their issues, they're genuinely frequently attacked, for choosing to discuss that stuff, because discussing it is the first step to recovery, whether it's with a friend or family member or social media or a therapist. Talking about it, organizing your thoughts about it is a great way to get help. I don't know why people attack me or other people because of it. It's the world we live in right now. But don't pay attention to those idiots. Pay attention to the people who are there to help, who've experienced the same, and there can be a lot of help in that regard. Now, this is just one man's opinion. There's plenty of people out there who disagree with me, and if you're one of those people, let me know in the comments section below. I've seen a lot of people say that therapy is a waste of time, and it's pointless, and it's idiotic, and I've heard a lot of people say medication is terrible and awful, and you should never take it, and you should only use like CBD oil, or eat oranges, or go for a walk. I've seen a lot of that as I've talked about this stuff. And it's okay if that's what you believe, if that's what worked for you, if that's helping you. Let me know that in the comments section below. I don't have your experiences.
Alright, that's the end of this video. Stay tuned for the next one. I just didn't feel that.